Okay, Jeff. First of all, I don't know what happened to you, but did you get into a contest with Alan Faneca, your good buddy, like a weight loss challenge or something?
No, we didn't, and I couldn't win that challenge with him. I saw him last night. I was thinking, how did this guy run a marathon when he was done playing football? I retired from football because my knees, and I don't think I've run 2 miles since I retired. But once you get out of the weight room, my job literally was to eat and weight lift and get sleep and to stay at 295 pounds. And once you're not doing that, the weight just kind of came off pretty quickly. But I'm 51 years old now. To get to this point, I wouldn't say it's a lot of work, but you got to watch what you eat. That's for sure.
Well, for a lot of us, if eating and sleeping was a job, that'd be a good job. But the in-between part, the lifting and running into huge men, I want to take you back to when you were a bigger guy. How did you wind up going from Northwest Ohio to Penn State?
Well, I was a Notre Dame fan, and back then they didn't have 5-star, 4-star, 3-star recruits, but I would have probably been a 3-star recruit, I'm guessing. But my quarterback from my high school team, small school, I mean, we're a small town school, he was a 5-star recruit, and he was getting recruited by a lot of big schools, Penn State included. Yeah, Bobby Hoying.
Right.
He was getting recruited, and I think in the recruitment of Bobby Hoying, then I came on the radar, and Penn State in particular was like, who's that guy? And I wasn't an Ohio State fan. I was, like I said, a Notre Dame fan. And Notre Dame, you had to be 5-star to go to Notre Dame then and now, really. But I'm very thankful because I wanted 2 things. I wanted the chance to win a national title and a chance to go to the NFL. And then Penn State really fit me well just because of the country setting, a little bit, small town still. Compared to Ohio State and a city and some other schools, but bottom line is it was about winning, wanting to win a national title, and they were coming off of 82, 86, and I was recruited in 91, so hopefully we would be the next national championship team.
Well, you're drafted by the Lions not too far from your hometown, within a few hours. What was it like the draft day and getting the phone call, I assume, from the Lions saying you'd been drafted?
Yeah, you kind of know where you're going to end up going to some extent. I mean, obviously we watch drafts now and guys are in the green room, so to speak, and they fall out of the first round. So I guess that could have happened. But I kind of had a pretty good idea it was going to be late in the first round, but not necessarily where. So, there's a little bit of anxiety, but I'm a pretty focused guy, so my focus was just on I don't care where I go. I want to play in the NFL. Didn't matter. I actually didn't even root for NFL teams in high school or college because I was like, I'm not going to be an avid Bengals fan or avid Browns fan and then get drafted by, the Steelers. And then, that's you. So I was like, I don't care because I'm my plan is to go to the NFL. And I'm not saying that arrogantly. It was just like I wanted to just go all in on that. And so, I remember exactly where I was. I mean, obviously, at our house, I wasn't in no green room. It wasn't like it is now. I'm not sure I would have been anyways, but you're waiting for a phone call, and then you get one maybe I was picked 21, and so you get one, or 23, I'm sorry, 21, another guard got drafted. That's why I always remember that, and that was the Seattle Seahawks. And so it was, we kind of knew it was going to be between the Seattle Seahawks or the Detroit Lions as the picks started rolling off. And so, around that time, it's like, man, we're either going to be in Seattle or Detroit. That was a big difference. And so I was kind of thankful that, I fell 2 spots and ended up in Detroit.
Yeah, they had some good teams there. And Kevin Colbert was the director of pro scouting with the Lions. He moved on to the Steelers. Was that connection any part of the reason why you wound up leaving Detroit and signing with the Steelers in free agency?
It's probably close to say it's 100% of the reason why. Because I think Kevin, when he was in Detroit, he saw the capability that I had of moving to center. And they were looking for a center because Dermontti Dawson was retiring. And so, while a lot of other teams were just kind of probably looking at me as a guard, he had that firsthand experience to be able to see me. As a matter of fact, in Detroit, we had another great center, Kevin Glover, there. I mean, a perennial Pro Bowler, not quite Hall of Famer, but great man. And he retired in '98. So in '99, I almost moved to us. I was one of the guys they considered and then went a different direction. And so it definitely played into that decision.
So no pressure. You're going to move from right guard to center. There's one, and then you're going to take over for Dermontti Dawson. Did those thoughts go through your head? And what was that transition like, moving from guard to center?
It absolutely went through my head. Absolutely. I don't know how this is going to come across. Money talks. So what I mean by that is, like, you're a free agent and you obviously kind of want to have a pretty good deal. And, you know, Detroit had decided at that time to just let me go into free agency. They were going a different direction with their whole franchise. So that, you know, that made sense to them. And there wasn't necessarily a lot of options out there that I felt like were really good franchises, teams that, you know, were going to give me an opportunity to win, because you're not going to play forever. And Super Bowls were absolutely my goal. And it was a tremendous blessing. And never forget the day when I got called and asked to take a visit to the Pittsburgh Steelers because they're looking for a replacement for Dermontti Dawson. And I was like, okay, like, I'm not sure I'm super excited about moving to center. Never played there. Actually, never had played there in Pittsburgh, in Penn State or in Pittsburgh. Definitely had the body type for it. But I had watched Dermontti Dawson, not as much because you didn't play crossover games as much as you do now even. And so I rarely saw him on film. But when I did see him, and I wasn't really looking at him, he's a center, I'm a guard. But I'll tell you this, I signed. You know, I was very thankful for the contract that I was able to get. Everything fit really good. Super excited about playing for this franchise. I already recognized the fact that, man, they just always win. They find a way to win. I love the way they played. I loved Coach Cowher. And then I sat down and watched film of who I was going to replace, and I was like, after about a week, I was like, I can't do those things, so I better just focus on what I can do. He was an amazing man and an amazing football player.
So I want to step aside from football for just a moment, because I think Tunch Ilkin was an important guy. Obviously, he was the Steelers', you know, former great offensive lineman himself, and became the color commentator. He was an important guy in your life, wasn't he?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, it gives me chills when I think about him often, and I never come to Pittsburgh without thinking about him. I mean, obviously his death isn't that far away, so you would maybe think that, but no, he was a mentor to me. He was actually, I met him, first time I met him was in Detroit, and we brought him in to work out, you know, the Tunch Punch workout, and he you know, of all the people in my life, he's in the top 5. I'm not kidding. His faith, first and foremost, really encouraged me in my faith. I would drive in the team buses and sit next to him and Wolfley, and I would eat dinner out with him and Wolfley on road trips. And after my career was over, his was obviously over. You know, we did a lot of ministry together here in Pittsburgh, so that was really devastating to hear the news that he, you know, he had a disease. And, you know, obviously everyone was hopeful that he would last a lot longer than he did, because we just loved him and cherished our time with him. And I was never actually able to have another moment with him from the time that I found out, because I was in the middle of my football season. And then, you know, he passed so quickly at the end of that football season. You know, definitely brings sadness to my heart right now, and wish his family well. And he you know, I want to be like him and have the legacy that he has in a city. And, you know, I was kind of, you know, like in a positive way, kind of envy, I think is the right word. Like, you want to be like that guy, because you're so jealous of the impact that he had and the love that a city had for him. And he's definitely a guy that I think this city will never forget. And I hopefully, you know, kind of quote unquote enshrines him, you know, over by Heinz Field somewhere.
So I did want to ask you, now, you've moved to the Steelers, you wind up blocking for Jerome Bettis. You blocked for 2 Hall of Famers, Barry Sanders, Jerome Bettis. What's the difference blocking for 2 completely different style running backs like that?
Yeah, it is. Completely different styles. I mean, even when you look at running backs now and I get asked that, or I'm comparing myself, you know, who do you compare to Jerome Bettis? I don't even know if there is good comparisons, because that guy could run guys over, but he had feet that could make guys miss. And then you have Jerome Bettis, who he's just, you know, I heard a great quote from Barry Sanders. He was never looking at the guy in front of him, whereas Jerome really understood our blocking concepts and really understood how to make cuts based on how the defense aligned and how Allen and myself and, you know, the other guys up front were going to block for him. And I mean, if I kind of knew exactly where he was going to go.
In 2001, you guys led the league in rushing. 2004 and 5, you led the conference one year. But in those years and other years, you led the league in rush attempts very frequently. So you guys would get into games, you'd get a lead, teams knew they had to stop your running game, and you couldn't. They couldn't.
Yeah.
What was that like being on a team like that where here we come, we're going to run it, you could even shout it out the play, and they couldn't stop?
Yeah. Well, we did shout out the play a little bit. I mean, to be honest with you, we would have a call Opie, and they pretty much knew, oh, it was going to go here, and now it's going to go here. And, it was very satisfying. I mean, we took a lot of pride in that. Coach Cowher took a lot of pride in that. One thing I'm coaching now. One thing that I take from Coach Cowher is, what is your identity going to be? And our identity, I can remember one of the seasons, maybe it was week 4 or 5, and his challenge was we really haven't shown what our identity is going to be. We took that personal as an offensive line because we knew exactly what he meant. We're going to run the ball and we're going to stop the run, and play great defense, great pass rush with Joey Porter. And you're exactly right. There's so many comebacks in the NFL. And now in the NFL now, from 21 points down, 24 points down. It was hard to come back against us when we were up 10 points. Even if it was in the first quarter, halftime, once we got up 10, I think teams were like, I'm sure coaches were saying, you cannot get down to this team because you really don't have a chance to come back. And that's a credit to Coach Cowher first and foremost, maybe even the Rooney family, because we all know in Pittsburgh, they want to be able to run the ball, and they draft that way, and that's the culture. And they went out and got Jerome Bettis because they wanted to run the ball in 90, whatever it was, before I came here. And so at the end of games, 45 rush attempts and 15 pass attempts, that was fine with us. We liked that.
Well, when you won the Super Bowl, first of all, a great run through the end of the season, adversity in the playoffs, Jerome's rare fumble, having to win that game, and then beating Seattle. I'm sure just winning it is enough. That journey in that season was pretty incredible. What's it like? What was it like for you? You came to Pittsburgh to win, and you won.
Well, amazing. It was just like a dream come true. I don't want to make it, it's surreal. Honestly, it's just like, going to the Super Bowl, and it definitely meant a lot more. And I experienced a lot more because it was my 10th year. And I think it meant more to our team because we failed in 2001, and Coach Cowher was definitely the kind of coach that was capable of winning a Super Bowl. Went there in '95, I think, like I said. Built that team back up to be able to potentially go in '01, and then fell short. And then '02 wasn't quite the same team. And then '03, the wheels fell off, but we had an opportunity to draft Big Ben. So then, we come back in '04 and we won 15 in a row, I think. One of the longest streaks in NFL history, maybe including the playoff game, 16 in a row. That was rare. That was one of those years where we really felt like we could run the ball down, anybody. We weren't even necessarily out to win the last couple games of the year because we had locked it up, and yet we were able to go run the ball and still win those games. And but we fell short again to the same team, so that was tough. And then week 11 in 2006 is when we were, or I guess it would have been 13. We were 7-5, out of the playoffs. ESPN puts the playoff up there, and you're like, oh my goodness! I came back, Jerome came back. We all come back to go to the Super Bowl, and we find ourselves out of the playoffs right now. We had a great team meeting. We had great team leadership. And like you said, then went on a little bit of a roll, 4 games, got healthy, and then played really, really well. Indianapolis and Manning dominated him, but yet had to have a little bit of luck, that's for sure. After he fumbled, and that was another like, are you kidding me? But it all really did add to the satisfaction and fun of winning the Super Bowl.
Did it feel a little bit full circle for you to win the Super Bowl in Detroit, where you started your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think I think Jerome probably enjoyed that a lot more because that was his hometown, honestly. I enjoyed being in Detroit because we weren't in the sun and fun in Florida or something like that, and our team would be distracted, and my family would all want to come down and want to do whatever, and I kind of liked it because, there was nothing to do but focus on football. And then I didn't have any animosity towards Detroit from that perspective, but like you said, full circle, when you end up coming back, my first game, ironically, it was it was a preseason game, but was in Detroit, in the new stadium, the stadium that I thought was, you know, I was excited about them building, and I'm going to be able to be there, and we're building towards a, you know, a Super Bowl in Detroit, and you know, I'm a loyal person, so I was committed to the franchise, and they chose to go a different way. So that probably was a little full circle also, standing, I can still remember that, standing, going against my teammates. And so then 5 years later, coming back, standing in the same stadium, and I'm not sure I had played in, it was really special. Added a little bit more, you know, I guess you could say, made it a little bit more special because it was in Detroit.
And when you look at your decision to move to Pittsburgh, you win a Super Bowl, a couple of Pro Bowls, first team All-Pro, you cannot come up with a list of the greatest free agent signings in Steelers history and not see Jeff Hartings on that short list. What was your time in Pittsburgh like?
You know, it was, you know, I'm a man of faith, really blessed. You know, when I think about the players that I played with, the coach that I played for, the coaches that, you know, coached me, that I'm still, you know, when you see them, you literally say, you know, I love you, and because it was that kind of special time. You know, I think, and you know, what I've really learned in life is, like, you're not in complete control of everything. Like, you know, obviously you have to make decisions, but I can't ignore where God was really leading me, because we really had prayed a lot about that. I had become a Christian and prayed a lot about our decision, and decided that we had laid our family foundation in Detroit, and so it was like, okay, yeah, we'll stay in Detroit. And then to have Detroit say, we've decided to go another way, that rejection is hard. Doesn't matter, you know, we're human beings, football players are. And so when you feel like you've made a commitment somewhere and then they go another way, that was like, I was in the valley, you could say. Everybody, I think, understands that proverb. And, you know, went and visited another team and had an interest from another team. And it was like, man, these teams aren't even close to the Super Bowl right now. They're building towards that. Like I said earlier, to have a phone call from the Pittsburgh Steelers, to block for Jerome Bettis, to play for Bill Cowher, to play for a franchise that I was aware of and, you know, maybe didn't remember watching those Super Bowls in the 70s. Even now it gives me chills of how blessed I am. So that would be the number one word that I would think about. I think that no matter where you play, you're going to have some teammates that you're friends with, and I have those in Detroit. But then you add the camaraderie and the uniqueness of getting close to Super Bowls and losing championship games, and then having to come back and do it again, having to come back, and, you know, kind of did it together. Well, I was 5 years, you know, because that was my 6th year. Those guys, maybe you could add 1 or 2 more years where a lot of those players were drafted. I think Aaron Smith and some of those guys came in, you know, prior to me, Clark Haggans, obviously Joey Porter. But that group of guys from about 98 to 2008 was definitely me falling right in the middle. That was a really, I think, a special. The 70s and then that probably 10-year era are maybe the best eras of Pittsburgh Steelers football.
Jeff, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great catching up with you.
Hey, it was an honor and a pleasure.